Hello and a huge warm welcome. My name is Lorraine Davies and I am the host of this summit, The Expansion, Unleash Your Infinite Potential and Reclaim the Power Within. I am so delighted to welcome the fabulous Miranda Mitchell to be with us today. So Miranda has spent over 2 decades playing in the physical and subtle energies of the human experience. Her mission is to empower conscious leaders, entrepreneurs, and creatives to liberate their authentic voices within their businesses by skillfully dancing with the interplay of shadows and stillness through the lens of human design, gene keys, and self-realization practices. Honestly, I am so thrilled that we have connected and that you are here to co-create this space with me today. Thank you, Miranda, and a huge warm welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. I truly appreciate being in this presence, being with you. Much gratitude.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. So before we get into the depths of the beautiful world that we're going to talk about today, and I know you have a practice to share with us at the end, so everybody, you're going to want to stay tuned right to the end because there's a beautiful practice coming your way. I would love to set the scene, to understand a little bit more about your journey and how you came to be the beautiful version of yourself that you are today. So your own expansion.
And I'm going to, as we were sitting here speaking and listening, what came to me is to share my journey through the energy of who I was being in that point in time. Because energy in the way that we be truly does attract the people that you are surrounded by, and it attracts you to where you're going to be in that next moment. It makes you believe certain beliefs about yourself. There's so much ways that it really, the energy that we be affects us. And before I knew this, I was totally lost. I was lost in the momentum of life, of having to do all the things, trying to be seen externally, trying to be loved externally. I didn't love myself within. So it was constantly external looking. And because of that, I was totally lost because I was constantly looking. I wasn't aware of the fact that all I had to do was slow down enough to look within, to be grounded, to be no longer lost. And I feel like society today is still stuck in that evolution of wanting external validation, external love to be valued on the internal when it's really the opposite. So when I was younger, I had a pretty chaotic life. I moved out of my house at 14. I was with drinking. I was doing drugs. I was doing all the things to prove to myself that I was not valuable. I was not loved. I didn't matter to anyone who I was. So why did I matter? And it continued that way until I got pregnant with my son, my first son. And then with him, I realized that there was a purpose. So it grounded me. So for most of my life, I believed myself to be not worthy of being loved and supported and valued. But as soon as my son came, I had purpose. So when my first son came, I was able to ground and kind of connect in that way. So I was focused and no longer hurting myself in that way. I had a reason to live, basically. Then it's not that I still made wonderful choices. I ended up being in a marriage that was abusive because I felt like I was not lovable. So I moved through that marriage. Eventually, I was able to get out. It was a very scary situation, and I'm not sure how I got out of it. The only reason I did is because of my 2 sons now. I didn't want them to feel like this was okay. So yet again, I didn't value myself. I put myself in harm's way all the time. I was very quiet, so they never saw anything, never heard anything. But it was because of them that I got out of that marriage. It gave me that strength. Then later on in life, I found yoga, and yoga helped me tune into myself. And it was the first time that I actually had the space to listen to my inner guidance, which I didn't realize I had until then. And I started to really love my practice because it was my time. I felt beautiful and awesome and like energetic and peaceful after a practice. It wasn't like I don't look a certain way, my body isn't a certain way, where like that's what everything else was, right? So I felt amazing, and I wanted to start bringing that to people So then I went to go into yoga teacher training. So of course I dive into everything. 3 yoga teacher trainings later, I'm still doing the work of releasing all this stuff. And then as I started teaching more, I realized, okay, I can take everyone to a certain space, but now I want to take them deeper. How can I ask those questions? So then I went and got trained as a coach and did all of that certification. And within that point in time, somehow human design came to me. And when human design came to me, it gave me the tangible evidence that I needed. I have an undefined head and totally open asha. So I needed that tangible evidence of certainty, right? To understand, like, okay, all of these things in my life have been for me. It's not been against me. It's because of the energy that I was being. I was attracting that energy. That was who I was being. And as soon as I started to make those steps into different decisions, I started attracting different types of people, different opportunities. So with human design, I was able to do that. And then one step deeper, that's just started happening in the last year. I've been releasing the work on the voice and the conditioning of the voice, because for so long, I have swallowed down my words because I didn't want to hurt. I was told when I was younger, you're too blunt, you have to sugarcoat things, or you're too much, you talk too much, or you want too much, you're never happy. Like all of these things were being told to me. So I swallowed down everything because I didn't want to be too much. I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. I didn't want to rock the boat. And because of that, I was truly not living authentically. My voice was suppressed, and the people that around me and know me at that point in time, they didn't even truly know me because I wasn't being me. So for me now to be really working with people on their voice, it is the liberation of the suppression, of the oppression, of having to make other people feel comfortable, of having to be the good girl, of being the nice person, and really stepping into that voice boldly so that you create the impact energetically in the world. So that's my story through energy.
Oh my goodness. And I knew when we first connected, there was a reason that we were being called to work together. And as you share your story and as you share this voice liberation work with me, I just get full body shivers because, you know, even in my experience, firstly, I'm a manifestor in human design, and, you know, unintentionally, the conditioning that I received growing up was, yeah, you're too much. Like, that's not how we do things. And so I definitely shut down my voice and pushed down my voice. And I've seen it a lot in so many of the clients that I come to work with, is this feeling when you have those conversations, it's that feeling of, I don't feel heard. And actually, when you start to unpick that, it comes from that having been pushed down and not having listened to ourselves and then not voicing our truth. So the work you do is so necessary and so important when we're thinking about this expansion piece, and when we're thinking about, you know, particularly from that leadership perspective of stepping into your truth of who you are and creating the impact you are here to create. You were born to this life to create this connection with our true voice and what we are being called to speak out loud. Our truth is absolutely fundamental. So I would love to know a little bit more about this work. You know, if somebody is sitting here and feels like, yeah, you know, maybe, you know, if you've been on this path a little while, you might notice this. I certainly notice this with clients, and I'll go, oh, I can feel that throat chakra is a little bit blocked. So you might be, you know, you might have that awareness that there's something going on here. You know, obviously with all your experience in the physical and the subtle energies, how do we start to activate our voice? How do we start to let it be free?
Well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it because that's my voice.
Good.
And I have the 39 in my unconscious sun. That's all about provoking things. So it truly begins with deconditioning. And this is not, it's not like a sexy practice. This is something that is going to take time. There's a lot of people that come to me that want to like work on deconditioning or working on their voice. And it's like, okay, that's great. We can start the process, but there is no end result. There truly isn't. There is an evolution, and it's not even linear. Even there's bits and pieces of, yes, you'll take a few steps forward, but then you know what? Something comes up, a trigger comes up, and then you're in turmoil, and then you regress, and they're going all over the place. But that's the time that is actually the most pivotal, is when you realize, wow, I was just triggered with that. I went all over the place. I'm gonna have love and compassion, take a breath, and start over. And then that's the part. It's that consistent practice. So it's the deconditioning. I was taught in yoga, and I love how I always go back to yoga. So I had so much, it helped create my entire life, really, when I dove into that. My teachers always told me, you never teach or guide anyone nothing that you haven't done yourself. So I make sure that I do my practice and I do my work, because I know I'm here to help humanity. It's in my pearl sequence in the Gene Keys. I truly know this. I know it in my heart, but I can't pretend. I have to do the hard work, and I can't sugarcoat it. Sometimes it's going to be work that is light and fun. When you're diving into your human design chart and you see certain activations, like, oh, that's me. I've always known that. And then sometimes it's going to be dark. It's going to be yelling and screaming and anger and letting everything out through love, not restriction, because anger is something that I personally have just finally stepped into. I always believed I wasn't an angry person. And what it was is I created so many coping mechanisms on top of one another that as soon as something came up, I knew what to do. So I didn't get angry, because I was told that I was angry, or I was scary when I got angry. It was because I was holding all that in. So it's not linear, and it's not all fun, but it's all beautiful, because when you actually get into that, the anger, and you release it and you have it in a safe space, and then you finally say the things that you always wanted to say, but you couldn't because it would hurt people's feelings or whatever it was, there's this new freedom and ease that releases in the throat. And then because you've been able to practice it and do it, then you're more apt to step into doing it more and more and more often, until finally you're like me, where it's like, I'm just saying how I feel, and that's just the way it is.
And I love that, because the thing is, when we approach this as it's a practice, when we approach it from that place of there is no end destination, there's no urgency to arrive over here. It's just a continual learning, a continual evolution. And I love that you share so honestly, and this is really important to me, that you share that, you know, it's 5 steps forward and a few steps back, you know, because I think this is where for a lot of people the frustration piece comes in, because they feel like they're making headway and they're making progress, and like, yeah, this is, and then something triggers them, and something comes up for them, and then that's when we fall into the frustration or the resentment or the bitterness or the anger or the whatever it is. And actually, when we can be accepting of all of it and willing to experience all of it, something magical happens. While you were talking just then, I was thinking, because in fact, I know this to be true for myself, and I know there'll be other people on here who will recognize this. So I've noticed that, particularly in my business, I'm going to take you back to, where are we? 2014, so quite a long time ago, in my first business. And I was making waves, right? I was starting to experience expansion in my business. And then I lost my voice. And it wasn't just I lost my voice for a couple of days. I lost my voice for a whole month. And I had laryngitis, and then pharyngitis, and then laryngitis again. And it wasn't until, you know, at the time, again, frustration, like, why is this happening now? I'm in the midst of this massive thing happening in my business, like, rah. And but in hindsight, what I can see when I look back on it, it was literally, it was a safety mechanism. You know, my voice went, nope, nope. You know, you're hitting the ceiling of where you can cope with energetically. So we'll put a ceiling on it. And I think, you know, there's people who can definitely notice this in their own self, that there's this, you know, losing a voice, or having, you know, repeated problems in this area. And I think this is where this work is so fundamental, because we begin to understand that it's not necessarily a physical problem when we have these kind of moments of voice loss, that it's more than likely connected to this conditioning piece, or this, you know, trying to keep yourself small. And I kind of really think about, you know, when you're looking at this kind of work, you know, you said it's not linear. There's going to be kind of this toing and froing, but I would love to understand what this actually looks like the tangible voice activation piece. You know, when somebody goes, Miranda, I want to work with you, like, what does that actually involve?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. And I love that this is coming out now, because I've been sitting in meditation with things, because like I've mentioned, this has just really started to evolve lately with the voice aspect. I've been really working a lot in the last 2 years. First of all, I had sciatica pain for over a year, where I couldn't even move. I couldn't walk for a year. I went to Egypt. I got COVID. Then all of a sudden, like, my sciatica pain was gone. There's been stuff happening for all of this to come out. So for you to ask that, it's beautiful, because really it is really focusing on the voice. And it's not just the loudness, or like the anger, or like the things that you've been swallowing down. Those are like things a lot of people can kind of resonate with, like, oh, I swallowed that down. But it's even something like saying something to someone, and then they ignoring you and not listening to you because they feel like it's not a big deal, but yet it is a big deal to you. But yet then when they say that, you're like, well, maybe it's not a big deal, so I must be just in the wrong here, and then not doing anything. It could even be as subtle as that. That's not using your voice, because what's happening is they're kind of saying your voice doesn't really matter, how you feel doesn't really matter, because it's silly. And then if you don't express, you know what? No, it does matter. It feels like something to me, even though it may seem silly, it's still important, right? So when you start doing the work, you start to even become aware of those subtleties that aren't even so like in your face that happen. So really what I do is I can work one-on-one with people as far as like deconditioning the voice, seeing where they need the deconditioning, and going into the chart. Or I have like this beautiful experience of a community where people actually are going to be diving into their chart, understanding their type, their strategy, what motors are connected to their throat, the unconscious, all the things, and then having the opportunity to actually express their voice, like saying in the community all the stuff that you were not able to say, or that you're swallowing down, in a safe space. So you can practice in a safe space without people leaving you, without people calling you names, without people doing whatever. Because what that's going to give you is, after that, you're going to step out and know, like, no, this is it. I don't care if you don't agree with me or believe me. This is how I feel, because you've had that practice. You've been able to release that. So I do that.
Yeah, and that's safety. It's that safety piece, isn't it? It's feeling safe enough to do that. And by you creating that space for people to feel safe enough to do that, it, like, things can happen much more swiftly, because you're not just trying it out there in the real world and then getting rejected or pushback, right? You can just go out there and you can know that, right, I'm safe right now to speak exactly what is coming up for me.
And having people cheer you on, like, hell yes, so happy that you said that, right? Yeah. So absolutely. I work with that to get that expression out there, because so many times, like you said, we'll say one thing, like, okay, I'm gonna say this one thing, and then there's a reaction, and they're like, ooh, I don't like how that felt, so I think I'm just gonna, that was enough. Whereas now you have that space to keep trying it on, to keep saying it, to really work through your feelings. And then after you're able to do that, then we go deeper into like the energetics of the subtleties of why that has occurred for you. So first, it's really learning to release so you can externally get that, externally work on that physical aspect. Then after you have that confidence, then you get to come back and go into the nuances of, oh, this is some of my core wounds. This is what's coming up for me. And this is why I've done this, with love and compassion, of course. But then that way it's a yes and.
Yeah, because you can have that, because you've had that safety piece first, you can then have that self-compassion and that self-love approaching the core wounds. I think that's why it's such a crucial, like, that process is in that order for a reason, because you've had that activation, that feeling heard, being supported through that process, you saying what you need to say, and then that process of being like, okay, because it builds confidence, doesn't it? That whole process is building confidence and self-trust, so that when you go to do that as you say, the more subtle piece, you trust yourself enough to know that you can go there and it's going to be okay.
Right. And you have the experience already in expressing things. So especially as entrepreneurs and leaders and creating, it's important to be able to express, right? Like if you spent time inner reflecting for months and months and months, but wasn't saying anything,
you're not going to get anywhere, are you?
Exactly. So it's like, start saying, start releasing, start expressing, then come back, then digest, then go into the subtleties and continue to speak.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. Oh, so I've actually got a question, because, when we talk about like this releasing piece, this, saying what needs to be said, and, obviously in this support circle that you've got, when you're in that space, it is, you are safe. You can say what you need to say. And I really would love you to understand more about, when this is happening in kind of in the real life situations and somebody's in the moment. And because I definitely find that this is something I do, I'd like to think that I'm quite a direct person. I can, and I will say what I think and what I feel. But even so, sometimes I word things in a way that I'm like, I know that this is going to be, I'm still going to say what I think, but I'm wording it in a way that's less explosive, right? I'd love to understand, how that sits with this vocal piece and expressing yourself.
Yeah, so there's a yes and with this part too, because you never want to like be reacting, right? Like, so let's say you're in a reaction mode and you're just gonna yell and scream and do all the stuff, right? That's reaction. It's more so, okay, I need some time here because I'm really pissed right now. I need to digest. I need to do what I need to walk through it and get through it. But then what usually happens, at least this is what happened with me, I would have that space and then I'll be like, well, I guess I feel okay now. So I really don't want to start the energy being all tough again. And it's going to be hard. So I think I'm just not going to say anything. That's the next step. It's letting it sit back, calming down, and then saying exactly, don't sugarcoat it. If you're not in that reaction state and you're still going to be like blunt, like me, I'm very blunt, then you just say it. I do. I was told that I was blunt and I had to sugarcoat things, which is why I started suppressing. But now it's like, you know what? If you're not going to do this, this is not going to work for me. This needs to change. It's up to you. And it wasn't reaction. It wasn't anger, but it was still my truth.
Yeah, so it is the difference is that really grounded energy, isn't it?
Right. So it's not reacting from it.
It's not coming from up here. It's not like trying to validate or back up your decisions or whatever. It's coming from this very grounded, centered space of, this is who I am, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I feel, this is what I, this is how I want things to change. Because ultimately, we're talking about expansion, and I think it's a holistic approach. This whole, you can't just have, right, I'm going to have success in my business. We have to be willing to experience this expansion and the pushing of our edges in every area of our life. And that is going to include your relationships with your
Mhm.
family, with your other half, with your kids, whoever, with your friends. And actually, I suppose that's going to be a lot harder if for years you have pushed it down. But I suppose it's taking the first steps in that process, isn't it? Going, right, okay, I recognize this is what I've been doing, and going, I'm now choosing, I'm making a choice to change this.
Yeah, and that's where the love and compassion comes in, because there's a reason that you were doing that. It was that you were keeping yourself safe somehow, or maybe someone told you something that you wanted to be seen and valued and fit in and loved, and whatever it is, whatever it was, it is just the awareness of, wow, I was following down my words because I was afraid that they would leave me, because I was afraid that they didn't love me if I would truly express who I truly was, right? So that was the fear of not being loved. And it's not having judgment on yourself. It's having compassion of, okay, this is what's worked for me so far, but now I'm aware of this. And now I'm choosing to do something different because I truly want to be loved. I don't want to be suppressing so someone loves me. I want to be seen for who I am. So I'm consciously going to be in that uncomfortable over and over and over again until finally I'm comfortable in that space. I'm always about being comfortable in the uncomfortable, because as soon as you get comfortable in the uncomfortable, that means it's time for expansion. It means let's go. It's time to go further.
Yeah, I love that. And I use that exact same phrase. I'm like, let's get comfortable, like at the edges, in that uncomfortableness, because you know that when you're there, right, you're like, you are genuinely growing and expanding. So beautiful. Oh my goodness, I feel like we could talk about this for ages, but what I would really love to experience, we totally could. I would absolutely love to experience your work. So what I would love, if we can move on to this next piece, is if you'd like to explain what it is that we're going to do. And then obviously you can guide us through this beautiful practice. I'm going to mute my microphone and I'm going to let you take the reins here. And I will obviously speak to you all really soon, but I'm going to let Miranda take over now. So,
Okay. Well, this is work that I have incorporated because it takes in the physical practice of vibrating the throat, of closing the mind off, of truly looking within. And I mentioned previously that sometimes it's lighter, this work, and sometimes it's heavier. This part can be light. It doesn't always have to be heavy. And if you do this, then you actually get to maybe bring on the darkness a little bit, which might be a little scary, but that means you're growing and you're expanding. So definitely just start practicing using your voice or using your throat in a different way. So what I'm going to do is, as a yoga teacher, I've had a lot of experience in chanting and Eastern philosophies. And when I first did my yoga teacher training, I didn't realize there was going to be chanting in there. And I went there and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. Seriously. But then it was my favorite thing because it was releasing. Now the words will be in Sanskrit because that energy and that frequency of the word helps open things up. You don't need to know what it is. You just experience the chant. If you know it, you can definitely chant with me and do the chant to help. If you don't know it, you can listen at first until you feel comfortable to do a couple chants with it. I decided to choose Ganesh. He is the remover of obstacles. And the reason I chose him was because I've had a deep connection with obstacles in life. The voice is an obstacle that we restrict a lot of. So I wanted us to express through this chant. Plus, I have a deep connection to astrology, and he's also the connection to astrology. So I wanted to bring him in. So just for you guys to know what I'm going to be saying, I'm going to break it down. It's Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Very simple once you get it. And we're just going to repeat that over and over and over again. And if you want, and if you're actually doing the practice, you can place your hand on your throat just to feel the vibration, just to notice there's stuff happening here. Okay. And if you're not, that's okay. You don't have to do that. So I'm going to do some rounds. I'll start slow. It goes faster. And then I'll start slowing down again. And when I start slowing down, you'll know, okay, the end is coming. And then after, you just keep your eyes closed. Okay. So we're going to get started. Okay. So find a comfortable seat. If you're on a chair, you can ground your feet, maybe lift up your toes so you can spread your toes as you place them down. Make sure that your back is straight and your shoulders are back. Your chest is not rounded over your heart. We want to have that heart open, pulling the navel in slightly to support the lower back. Taking a nice deep breath in through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. Again, we'll take a nice deep breath in through the nose. And exhale one more time with no sound through the mouth. One more time. This time on the exhale, we're going to kind of just make a little bit of a sound to open up the voice, to open up the throat on the exhale. So you're going to take a nice deep breath in. And then on the exhale, make a little noise with the throat. And just notice, is there tightness? Do you feel like you have to swallow? What's going on in the throat? Does it feel restrictive? That's a sign there. No judgment. Always, always no judgment. Just awareness in whatever showing up for you in the moment. Now keeping the eyes closed. I will start, and then you guys can choose to follow, continue. Always starting with Om. Inhale. Om. Om Gam Ganapatiye Namaha. 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 Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om. So with the eyes closed. Just noticing if you're able to chant, if there's a release or a vibration in the throat. Maybe it's less tense. Maybe it's more tense because there's stuff coming up. When you breathe in and out through the nose, bring that breath to the throat, filling that space. You just worked that space, so giving that oxygen to the throat, to the releasing. Maybe notice how the mind is feeling. Were there thoughts that came up? Sometimes if you do this practice longer, there's emotions, there's thoughts. These are things that are restricted in this space. Everything happens for a reason. If a thought shows up, or an emotion, there's something there. It's not just random. So if that does happen during a practice, if you have a notebook, sometimes you can write that down just so that you're aware. When we're connected intuitively, sometimes we lose track of things or track of our ahas that show up for us in that moment. So you can always take a note. And then continue to breathe in and out through the nose. Relaxing the shoulders. And then stay here just for a moment with the eyes closed. Deconditioning doesn't have to be so hard all the time. You can do 3 minutes in the morning every day of this and just see what starts to come up. It doesn't always have to be 2 hours, weeks. You can start to add in a little practice. And then what happens is usually things start coming up and you enjoy it, so you go a little bit deeper. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And if you have a journal, you need to write something down that came up for you, definitely write something down, whatever. You want to journal freehand, I love that too, just whatever came up for you. You could even start with my voice sounded and notice what comes up. So when I do that, I always, if nothing comes to me, I write my voice sounded, my voice sounded, my voice sounded cracky, my voice sounded, and you just keep going and going until this beautiful thing emerges. So whatever you feel like you want to journal about, and I hope that something came up for you.
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much. So powerful. I really I obviously, for everyone here, I pinned Miranda, so you couldn't see me having a good old chant over here. But I really love that feeling of the resonance, you know, like as you can feel it vibrating. I can feel it all through like my nose and down through my throat, and feel it vibrating in my chest. And I think in those moments when we're connecting and we're doing something like this, you can't be in your head. You are totally 100% grounded in this present moment, in your body, experiencing this, and it's such a powerful place to be. So I know that I really enjoyed that, and I know there's going to be a lot of people here who did too. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this section that Miranda shared with us, the practice, also available as a separate track as well as the main video, so that if you're watching this whole thing and you want to come back to what she shared, it's really accessible for you to do that, because I think it's so powerful. So before we finish off today, Miranda, I would love to know whether there's anything else that you are being called to speak out to the collective or to share with, as leave us kind of as a parting message today.
Yeah, it would be, you deserve to be able to have self-expression, whatever that may be. We all deserve to be able to express our voice. And it's not our job to sugarcoat things to keep everyone else feeling safe and comfortable, because those that truly love you and know you will understand that you don't have to make yourself small for other people. So fully start saying those things.
So powerful, and goes so beautifully back to what you were saying earlier, and actually a key phrase that I have got written on post-it notes around me, which is take up space. Like, take up the space that you are here to take up. So that was so beautiful. Thank you. So for everyone who's watching and is like, oh, I want to know more about Miranda, I want to go and play in her world, go and hang out with her, where is the best place for people to come and find you?
I think the best place would be Instagram, to go to Miranda J. Mitchell. That way you can look at some of the posts where I get to like provoke little things, talk about voice. And then from there, you can decide if you want to go to my website or whatever. But I think that Instagram is the most fun, appealing way. Definitely.
That's amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much. Miranda, thank you so much for such a beautiful, open, authentic, just expansive conversation. I really feel so grateful that I got to work with you on this session today. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
And to everybody watching, thank you for your time and your energy, and I look forward to speaking to you all really soon. Bye bye for now.